Hello, everyone, and welcome to Coleman Reports Fraud Friday. I'm your host, Mike Geske, and today we have a lot of great fraud stories for you. Starting off, we have Delaney Sexton talking about the new bill going through the House on PPP and idle loan fraud.
What's going on in Washington? This concerns Fraud Friday. This gives some opportunities for the regulators to extend the statute of limitations. So tell us what's going on with the House Small Business Committee.
Yes, so the House Small Business Committee has committed two bills, one for PPP and one for EIDL. So under the False Claims Act, they currently have a 6-year statute of limitations to investigate and pursue PPP and EIDL fraud. But as we all know, there's quite a bit of fraud, so they're trying to extend it to 10 years. This could go into 2031 and 2032 if this passes. So of course, it qualifies PPP applications, but it also is addressing forgiveness applications and any fraudulent forgiveness applications. And then EIDL, it's the EIDL applications, the EIDL advances, and then the other, I'm forgetting the other advance name. I apologize.
Lance, yeah, go ahead, Lance.
I was just going to say, the thing about this, I want to make sure and emphasize, PPP, the fraudulent applications are still a very small percentage of the overall, but the numbers are massive. And in working through PPP servicing and liquidation, big numbers mean it takes a lot more effort. An example of that is the guaranteed purchase process on 2021 PPP loans. At Fountainhead, we did a substantial number of PPP loans. And even though what we're going to work through in the fall is a small percentage of the overall portfolio, it's going to take quite a bit of effort and work to work through that. And, we're looking at adding some temporary employees to help us work through that process. Same thing is true of PPP fraud and EIDL fraud, guys. Delaney and I were talking about this earlier today, Joe. I believe, I'm a strong believer that we'll be talking about PPP fraud for at least 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it could be longer.
Yeah, we've discussed that in the past, and I think this just gives them the opportunity to investigate all the false information that they need to investigate. It's going to take maybe years, or that's what they're saying, a decade to get to the bottom of all that fraud. So excellent reporting, Delaney. And you give us a recap of what we talked about with the PPP appeal process, and you wrote about that on Tuesday. And Lance talked about it shortly on Monday, but the PPP appeal process has been updated by SBA, right? Right, Lenny?
Yes, I'm going to throw this one back to my dad, though.
Okay.
Yeah. So what happened is this, I noticed it on Monday, and it may have been there earlier than Monday, but when you have a PPP borrower who submitted a forgiveness application and SBA denied it or did a partial approval, that borrower has the right to appeal. And just want to throw out there, the appeal process has to be completed by the borrower. The financial institution cannot complete that appeal for the borrower. So the borrower says, no, I don't agree with the denial. No, I don't agree with the partial approval. And they submit an appeal. When that process takes more than 60 days, SBA is now given us as participant lenders an avenue to go ahead and get paid on the guaranteed purchase. Now, I'm not exactly sure how SBA will handle the accounting on the backside, but I have successfully submitted a substantial number of guaranteed purchases on partial approvals that were appealed and denials that were appealed. Now, what makes that different? You used to submit a guaranteed purchase, you used to need to have an indictment, a death, a bankruptcy, or be 60 days past due. And that button could have been there for a long time prior, and I just didn't notice it. But now I've noticed you can, in fact, on a PPP loan that's been appealed, when it's appealed, it's still technically on deferment. So it's not past due. There are no payment requirements. But if there is an appeal and the appeal has been in process for 60 days or more, you can submit for guarantee purchase. I submitted a batch of those on Monday, and we've already been paid on those. So it is a great way to, especially on the 2020 stuff that's under appeal, you can clean up your books by going ahead and submitting those for guarantee purchase. It's like I said, I hadn't noticed. It may have been there before, but it is there for you. If you have a PPP loan that's under appeal and it's been under appeal for more than 60 days, you can submit for guarantee purchase, even on partial approvals. If there's a partial approval on appeal, you can submit for the remaining principal balance on a guarantee purchase. So that's, like I said, that's important to know as you work through the tail end of PPP servicing and liquidation.
Up next on today's show, we have a very interesting story about a commercial airline pilot being charged with $9.5 million in PPP fraud.
Delaney, this commercial pilot is charged with almost $10 million in PPP fraud. What did Mr. Carl Delano Tor, I'm going to let you go with that. What happened with this commercial pilot?
So he was claiming, and this is all alleged, that he had a business that was already in operation in February 2020. They're saying that it was not even created until 10 months later. In addition, he backed this up with fake tax documents, fake reports, and payroll information, claiming he had 493 employees. He did manage to obtain this $9.5 million PPP loan. And it's alleged he might not have used that on the proper reasons. We love to hear what they spend their money on, including about $1.7 million for a personal residence, over $800,000 to start a new trucking business. So there was a little small business somewhere in there. $300,000 for other real estate, a BMW M850 XL, a Land Rover Velar, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that right. I don't know my cars, and $15,000 for plastic surgery, just to wrap that all up.
I imagine the seizure lot is filling up, Lance, with these BMWs.
Yeah, this one completely drives me. This type of fraud is what really gets under my skin. I have some heartburn when the SBA gives someone who has a legitimate small business who may have, miscalculated the amount of the loan originally, but they spent all the money on payroll, and they get given a hard time in the forgiveness process. But you look at somebody like this, he didn't have employees, and he got a substantial PPP loan and used it. The house and the cars, we've heard that, but the plastic surgery, this one has come up in my walk of life on PPP servicing 2 or 3 times in the last bit. And this guy spent some money on plastic surgery. So these, I'm not saying all fraud needs, it all needs to be prosecuted, but this is an example of someone who allegedly used the money very improperly.
Absolutely, yeah.
Up next on Fraud Friday, we have another interesting story involving a duo pleading guilty to My Buddy loans in an EIDL fraud scheme.
Last story, duo pleads guilty to My Buddy loans, an idle fraud scheme.
Yes, this one is
My Buddy loan.
I'm quite interested in this one. This was a new one for me, at least. These two were working from home, calling individuals saying, hey, give us your personal information. We can apply for an agricultural grant for you with as little as 1 acre of land. So, of course, people would be interested. They managed to obtain quite a bit of people's personal informations, which they instead used to file idle loans. Actually, idle advances. They got over $1.5 million in idle advances, and I believe those only go up to $10,000. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, the
So that must
advance
have been,
were $10,000.
that must have been quite a number of people. They also submitted another 1.44 million, but the funding had already run out, so those did not work out for them. In addition, because of these, they use Square credit and debit card processing, and using about 700 successful charges, they got $700,000 in fees. So they collected quite a bit.
Yeah, and we talk about this every week, Delaney, on Fraud Friday, is that these fees were enormous for these individuals that were able to convince a lot of people to take out applications for SBA lending, SBA PPP or EIDL loans during the pandemic. It was, and now with what we talked about at the top of the hour, of extending those statute of limitations, and everybody's on board with all the acronyms, and the regulators are hunting down these individuals. So excellent reporting, Delaney. Always entertaining, and and these train wrecks are just, we listen to this every week. So.
And finally on our show, we have a U.S. Postal Service clerk being charged with identity theft and EIDL fraud. Delaney has more.
Moving along, a United States Postal Service clerk was stealing credit cards and blank checkbooks, and what was Janelle thinking, Delaney? I mean, this is just classic identity theft, and she's in a lot of trouble for it. So,
I wish I could tell you. She was selling these or giving away these cards and checkbooks to some co-conspirators, and she would get cash back. Now, these co-conspirators would then forge signatures, and another interesting thing is they would write out checks payable to individuals, and some of them were New Jersey high school students who would also end up receiving some cash for participating in this. So I believe they managed to obtain about $366,000. But in addition, she continued her fraud streak, tried to apply to an EIDL loan. She was already in some legal trouble due to this fraud scheme, so of course you can't apply for an SBA loan.
Yeah, I think this one is particularly interesting, and it makes you wonder. I don't know how many of you are old school like me and still have a checkbook, but when you order checks, they get sent in the mail, and now we're being told the Postal Service employees stealing checks in the mail. So that's
hopefully this is very rare. Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's not common, and I've never had an issue in life. But I'm just sitting here thinking, I just got an order of checks in my mailbox last week, and I'm sitting here thinking, how easy would it be for somebody to take those and do something like this with?
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Reports Fraud Friday. If you enjoyed today's content, please be sure to subscribe to our channel and click that bell icon to receive notifications on our latest episodes. Thank you for joining us today for Fraud Friday and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Thank you.